Congratulations on the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I watched the ceremony. In your wildest dreams, when you started wrestling, did you ever imagine that would that be something you would accomplish? Wow, that's awesome.
I probably didn't know about it, because wrestlers really kind of compete for something. They're on the mat, they get a medal around their neck, or they don't. And this is one of those that, because of your lifetime of accomplishments, of medals, of whatever, you get an award. So I probably didn't know about it until not too long ago, and the fact that no wrestler's ever gotten it, and I think this opens the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. An amazing accomplishment. I mean, and like I said, you're having a president present you and everything. It's just, like I said, not that you're aiming for that, but it's just got to be a cool moment just to experience that. It's like a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Well, I think what's going to happen is other wrestlers are now going to say, hey, I want to be a state champion. I want to be a national champion. I want to be a coach. I want to win the Olympics. I want to do this and do that. And I want to do so much for the sport that, I win this Medal of Freedom. So that'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to talk a lot about wrestling, but let me open things by talking about the movie, The Last Champion. I had a chance to watch the movie on Sunday. As a wrestling fan myself, growing up, there's a million sports movies out there, baseball, football, boxing, of course, but wrestling was not a sport that ever really got, any kind of that coverage. And as a fan and knowing wrestlers, it's like, man, there are some tremendous stories out there. And then, Foxcatcher came out, which obviously detailed a very true life story. But kind of what was your idea? Like when you heard about this movie and they approached you, like, what was your thoughts? Because we just haven't seen wrestling really kind of get the dramatic attention I believe the sport deserves.
Well, I got a condo in Florida and I got a call, and they basically, one of my former wrestlers, they brought in to kind of critique the wrestling part of the movie, just the skills, the techniques, the strategies. How does the wrestling look? Well, it's kind of funny that all of a sudden when it was critiqued, because the movie, he goes, yeah, I watched the movie. The movie's good. There's a lot of meaning there, a lot of heart, a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of goodness. He said, but the wrestling is not good. The wrestling is not good. And he said, I'm a former wrestler. What do you mean? He goes, well, you're just not representing what we think our sport can represent. So he goes, well, what do you want to do? You want to help fix this? He goes, I think a better idea is if you give this guy a call. You may not know him, may know him. His name's Dan Gable. And he goes, I know him because he was a wrestler too, Glenn Withrow. And so he got a hold of me and I came in, and I think my wrestler that was there actually could have fixed it pretty well. But, you just got to make it look real. You got to make it look good. And that's basically what I did. Got Randy Lewis to come in with me, another Olympic champion. We got Jason Bryant, an announcer. Jason kind of, he did all the lead in the broadcasting. And so we just kind of broadcasted the state championship match and did a good job on it. And, there's some moves in there that are a little, well, they're not perfect, but they're really good. And actually, the move that is the big move at the end there, Randy Lewis has hit on a few guys. He's an Olympic champion in 1984. I've seen him hit it so many times, but it's kind of it's almost like a move that you wouldn't see in a wrestling match. It'd be more like you see in a fight, or you might see it in a judo move or a match or something like that. But it definitely works. In fact, in my world championship final, back in 1971 against the Bulgarian, I hit a foot sweep, which is kind of a jiu-jitsu move, or I should say a judo move, where you kind of kick the feet out of your opponent underneath him and he flies. And if you hit it perfect, you fly with him. But when you land, he lands underneath you. And so you pretty much knock him out. But it's a good movie. And what I really like about it is, we're kind of, I don't know if anybody likes anybody right now, but it's a tough time with this virus. It's a tough time with the division in people when parties. It's kind of a movie where you sit down and whether you like the other person or not, it can kind of bring you together. In fact, when my family watched it, one of my oldest daughter kind of cheered pretty loud at one point during the movie, and so I knew that it's a good movie. Good movie for families. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know authenticity is a big part of it. And I imagine, when you watch sports movies, authenticity is a big part of it. The story, the heart of the story, when you think about the lead character that Cole Hauser plays and obviously the broader story of his story and then coming back to his high school and all those kind of things, those are all the dramatic points and those are great. But you got to have the authenticity with the wrestling, right? Because otherwise people who know the sport are going to see right through it. They're going to see, what it is. And I imagine you being involved and obviously the rest of the team, it's like, that's a big part of it, right? The authenticity of making it look as real as possible for, a Hollywood production.
Absolutely. And it's pretty authentic, but I don't know if too many people have actually executed, too many wrestlers have actually executed that hold that we get right in the end there. So it's there. It's just kind of a high level move. I'll call it a high level move. Yeah.
When you were wrestling and coaching and obviously being such a huge part of the wrestling community for so much of your life, did you ever imagine that it would get to, where we would see, wrestling being portrayed like this in film? Because again, as I said, I think wrestling has been one of the sports that I feel like would be great for, a film, for a movie. When you think about some of the great moments in Olympic history, some of the great upsets in Olympic history, but Hollywood hasn't really paid that much attention. So did you ever imagine like you'd be working on a film of this magnitude, doing this kind of thing?
Well, I never really thought about what I was going to do with my life. It just so happens kind of worked into wrestling starting in high school. Full time, and it never let up. So I'm one of these guys that wrestling has been my life the whole time. In fact, it's kind of funny because when I asked my mom, when I was, I said, when did I start out as a young wrestler? And she goes, well, I can tell you right now, we brought you home the first night from the hospital, put you in a bed, and you were crying, of course, which babies cry. But when I came in, you had already worked yourself off your back and you were on your belly. And I said, first night? She goes, yeah. So I'm going to believe my mom. So what's one of these things that's been my whole life and it's not letting up. And with this Last Champion movie, that's great. With the presidential, and again, I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at that, that medal, but that's the Presidential Medal of Freedom right there. Pretty proud of it. And it's a lifetime of work, but I'm not letting up yet. And guess what? I got a key to the White House here too.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. Yep.
It's when you've been such a part of the wrestling community and wrestling has gone through a lot. We got to be honest in terms of, the sport. We've seen it with colleges, colleges dropping programs. A couple of years ago, I covered it extensively. I used to be at Fox Sports. We covered it extensively when the Olympics were trying to get rid of wrestling and then the effort to get it back. And now it feels like wrestling is actually growing much bigger when you see obviously what mixed martial arts, you see so many high level wrestlers going into mixed martial arts. You see coverage for the NCAA championships getting good ratings. And now we're seeing the Olympics coming back next year. Do you feel like, wrestling is kind of hitting that point now where, the sport is really starting to get the attention it's always so richly deserved?
No, we've come a long way, but that's because we got some organizations that are really working full time at it. Back in the day when I was wrestling in high school and college, really the coaches did everything for the sport. Now several organizations led by USA and Rich Bender. But we have, instead of just being a male sport, it's a female sport, and it's one of the fastest growing sports in colleges. So it's at the Olympic Games for females. So I think the thing right now that we have to whip is this virus, and I think who better than wrestlers to pin this virus down and eradicate it. But I guess it needs a vaccine, and it looks like we're, not too far off. But I think we need cooperation and people to kind of not battle each other. They can do that on the mat. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Let me ask this question if I could. I mentioned, of course, my interest in wrestling goes back to, my high school and junior high days. But then, of course, covering mixed martial arts as I've done, we've seen so many high level wrestlers come into our sport, into fighting, and vice versa. And I remember having this conversation with Daniel Cormier a few years ago when, Kyle Snyder mentioned, maybe eventually after hopefully winning a second gold medal, he'd like to maybe test himself in fighting. And Daniel said something interesting to me. He said, listen, we love high level wrestlers coming into our sport. Obviously wrestling has had a great success in mixed martial arts, but he said, we also need the Kyle Snyders of the world, the high level guys to stick with wrestling, to coach wrestling, to stay with wrestling. Like, how do you feel about that as a guy who spent so much of your life devoted to wrestling, either on the mats or coaching, seeing, so many guys having opportunities like mixed martial arts, but then also making sure we're not leaving, great athletes like a Jordan Burroughs, who is obviously an icon, now of this day, who, has stayed devoting to wrestling. Like, he's not going to do anything else. He wants to be involved in wrestling.
No, hey, I like what I call lifers. I call them lifers in the sport. And, mine was, I'm a lifer in the sport, but it just so happens that the opportunity to make money as a participant after the Olympics really wasn't there until after the Olympics, and starting in 1976, they started actually being able to pay people and have a decent living. So I want to keep the good wrestlers in the sport as long as possible. And if there's another avenue that they can work after that, that's fine as well. Because, like I said, wrestlers have that feel that you need in a fight. They have that feel that they, if they are smart, they can make the jump. And I'm sure that some of them may be better in mixed martial arts as compared in wrestling, and the wrestling will help. So you kind of analyze each person to see where they need to be. And again, the love of it, whether you really like which one better. It's little, mixed martial arts might be a little tougher in terms of what is expected out there from the fan, and it depends on whether you really want to administer some real pain. People always said that I was a Punisher wrestler, and yeah, I think I was, because I kind of ripped their arms off when I got on top of them. But there's rules and regulations, especially in amateur wrestling. And I'm sure there's rules and regulations in mixed martial arts, but probably not to the extent that we are for in safety for wrestling. So it kind of depends on each guy and his mindset.
Yeah, I do.
Girl too.
What I do love, just like with The Last Champion, though, now that wrestling is kind of getting this kind of a movie, which is amazing. And just like, again, the outpouring of support that came out when the Olympic thing happened a few years ago, wrestlers are being given opportunities now, which I love, because, again, Mark Coleman is a very good friend of mine. And when he left, college at Ohio State and went to the Olympics and things like that, like, after that, there just wasn't much for him to do. He didn't have any opportunities really. And he ended up going into fighting, of course. But now we're seeing that coaching is out there, and it's a legit, obviously occupation. See what Cal Sanderson's doing at Penn State. And then obviously there is the option of like a Daniel Cormier to find fighting and make a living. Like, it's just, I think it's amazing that we are seeing more and more wrestlers finding opportunities to remain and become professional athletes.
Well, what's amazing is that we have the technology to be able to get it out there as well. I mean, even right now, it's just amazing that we can, people will stay in home and they don't have to go out to these football games or they go to the events. They can watch them and tune in at home. And some of it's regular TV, some of it, you have to buy. But we have so many opportunities through technology now that gives people the opportunity to participate no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll close that on this, Mr. Gable. Obviously I mentioned the Presidential Medal of Freedom, something you probably as you're winning a gold medal, you probably never imagined it would end up being winning the president, having the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And you probably never imagined at that moment that you'd be starring in a movie about wrestling. But is it kind of fun just to see the great things that are happening right now for you and for the sport as a large? Because again, you're obviously an icon of wrestling. You've been such a huge part of the wrestling community, but to see the love and the support you received with this movie and with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, like, it has to feel good knowing that people appreciate all that you've done.
Well, what's amazing to me is, I've been able to do those accomplishments in my area, but then because of expanded areas like what we're doing right now, talking to you with the mixed martial arts, the background right now, that's amazing to me because we have expanded. I mean, I got a museum now, and that museum is always tough to make, and it's a division of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, but there's a National Wrestling Hall of Fame Gable museum in my hometown of Waterloo, Iowa. I don't think it would have gone until we had some of these opportunities that can spread. Just like me, I'm sitting here talking to a computer, right now, but without those opportunities and continued development, you don't make a lot of progress. And wrestling is making a lot of progress, but I'll tell you, a lot of people that get in positions of authority don't realize that. And so, like a place like Stanford right now, who is dropping the sport of wrestling, is really, I believe, making a mistake because of what we've talked about in the last half hour here. So it's just when you have something that is out there, you don't want to take it away. And especially in a state like California, that's got like the largest number of high school participants in the sport of wrestling. And you don't have very few places to go in college. Fresno State, another one that had a good program, then they dropped it and then they brought it back. And now they're looking at dropping it again. Those are really mistakes that you're making for your home people. And right now with a lot of people leaving certain states and going to where they feel more comfortable, I really think that you should be doing things to keep people in your state, to keep your state prospering and making a name for itself. And when you got that many people that wrestle in the state of California in the high schools, you need to give them opportunity to stay within your state and especially offer an activity that thousands and thousands of people are doing it. And not only males, but females now. So that's my pitch.
Absolutely. Mr. Gable, it's an honor to speak with you. Thank you so much. I really look forward to more people seeing The Last Champion. I really enjoyed the movie. Congratulations again on the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And thank you so much for taking the time. You have no idea how much it means to me to be able to speak to you. So thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, I appreciate it. And that Last Champion, you sit down, enjoy yourself, get some popcorn, and you'll feel good afterwards.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.